Hello, welcome to another one of our bookshop events. It's World Book Day, very exciting, and it's World Book Day, 3rd of March 2022, and we've got the brilliant Kieran Larwood here. Kieran, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure.
No, you've had to get up early. It's a 9 o'clock start for you, so you got the first shift.
Yeah, I'm not used to early mornings, so.
The life of an author. It's you were telling me you've been an author full time now for, was it 4 years?
I think this is the 4th year. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So what were you doing before that?
I was a teacher. I was a primary school teacher. I taught reception in a little school in the Isle of Wight here for 15 years.
Brilliant. And did you used to make up stories for them when you were teaching them?
Yes, we had loads of stories every day. I used to make them up. We do fairy tales and picture books and everything. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a complete replica of how Michael Morpurgo. He was a teacher, and he would start by making stories up, and he found that his stories got a better response than the ones he ever found out. I mean, obviously, children's literature was very different back when he was a teacher. But it's an absolute pleasure, and thank you to all the schools for joining us. Now, the instructions here. I'm going to be throwing questions at Kieran all the way through. It'll be more formal towards the end. So teachers, TAs, please get your questions from all the children and credit the child as well and your school, so we can give you all a shout out, and which I know the kids love. So but without further ado, I'm going to stay here. But Kieran, please let me hand over to you.
Thanks very much. Hello everyone, happy World Book Day. I hope you're all having a really good time at school, if you've dressed up or if you've brought in a potato as your favorite book character or something like that. So this morning I thought what I'd do is I'd talk to you a bit about how I became a writer and how I get my ideas and how I write my books, and then I'm going to do a very quick bit about drawing a map with you, and hopefully a bit of a reading, and then there'll be some time at the end for me to answer your questions. So I think you can type in your questions, and then I'll have a go at answering them at the end. So
everyone needs pen and paper, pencils and papers as well. So if you can sort that out.
Yeah. Okay. So how I became an author? Well, when I was at school, when I was your age, I didn't want to become an author. I didn't even know I was any good at writing. My thing at school was always drawing. And I don't know if it happened to any of you, but when you're really good at something at school, you kind of get a bit of a label on you. So I was always the kid that's good at art, and everyone always expected me to grow up and become an artist. And that's what I thought I'd do as well. So I didn't really try writing, but I did love reading. And from a very early age, I loved reading lots of books. But when I was your age, there weren't a great deal of children's books around, not like there are at the moment. And then one day I found on my parents' bookshelf a book called The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. When I opened that up and I saw the map inside, it just amazed me. And I realized for the first time that books don't have to be set in the real world. They can be set in completely invented new worlds or different times or different planets. And ever since I read that book, I just loved fantasy books. And even today, my favorite books to read are fantasy books. But anyway, so I went on, I ended up becoming a teacher. And then while I was teaching, I thought, well, I ought to do something with my drawing and my art still. And I was teaching reception. I don't know if you remember being in reception, but you read a lot of picture books like the Gruffalo and things like that. So I thought I'd have a go at doing a picture book. But of course, you need a story to illustrate. So I asked some couple of friends and they're all too busy. So I thought I'll sit down and I'll try and write one of my own stories. And I actually discovered that I enjoyed writing the story more than drawing the pictures. And that's when I got what's called the writing bug. And I just started writing all the time then. And I started off writing lots and lots of short stories, just trying to find the kind of type of writing that I like doing the best. And after doing that for a while, I had an idea to do a children's book. And I was very lucky. I had what's called a light bulb moment, which is when just an idea kind of pops into your head like a light bulb. And I had a brilliant idea to do a story set in the Victorian times. Now, in Victorian times, they did something which isn't very nice. And if people looked different, if they were very tall or very short, they got put in what's called a sideshow. And people used to pay to come and look at them and kind of point and laugh, which is something we would not do today and is a horrible thing to do. But the Victorian times, they didn't have Netflix, so that was their entertainment. And I'm sure you've all seen a film called The Greatest Showman. That's actually based on a true character called P.T. Barnum, who had that exact show, and he traveled around the entire world showing off General Tom Thumb and people like that. So my idea was to have a group of these characters living in London, and then when their show was finished at night time, they go out into the streets of London and kind of solve crimes. And because they look different, they'd have different abilities, different kind of skills. So I sat down and I wrote my book. And then when you want to get published, the first thing you have to do is to get yourself an agent. And an agent, they're kind of like a big brother or sister. They look after you and help you get a publishing deal. So I started sending off my book to agents, and I got what's called rejected, which is when they send it back, say, no, we don't want your book, thank you very much. And it's not a very nice feeling, but if you want to become a writer, you have to be very determined and very resilient, and you have to just keep picking yourself up and carrying on. So I just sent my book off again and again and again and again, and I wasn't getting anywhere. And then I heard about a competition in the Times newspaper, and they run the competition every year for unpublished authors, and you can send your book off, and the prize is to get published if you win. So I entered that competition, and I won it back in 2011, a long time ago now. And the prize was my book was published, and it came out in 2012. So I was really happy. I thought, I've done it. I've become a writer. And I had lots of ideas for my characters. I was going to have a whole series of books about them. But then my publishers sadly turned around and said to me, actually, we don't want any more books from you. Sorry. And I was really, really upset there. And I thought, oh, this is too hard. And I actually gave up writing for a bit. I thought it was too tricky. But, you know, I still had lots of ideas coming, and I thought, I'll give it another go. And I thought, what I'll do is I'll go back and I'll write a fantasy book, because they're the books I love so much. I wanted to kind of recapture that magic feeling I had when I first discovered The Hobbit. So I started trying to think of a fantasy world I could write about. And there's lots and lots of fantasy books out there, and they're all kind of about the same thing. There's elves and dwarves and dragons. So I needed something a little bit different. And what I did was, if you remember, I said I love drawing. I still draw. I draw all the time, and I keep sketchbooks of all my ideas and all my doodles. So I went back to those, and I was flicking through those, looking for an idea. And I noticed that over the years, I'd drawn the same thing again and again, every now and then. I don't know if you can see that if I hold up. I'd drawn rabbits, but not like fluffy, cute rabbits, rabbits with swords and spears and shields.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, and as I was flicking through my sketchbooks, I noticed loads of those going back over the years, and I thought maybe this is an idea kind of trapped in my head that wants to come out. So then I started thinking about a world where rabbits live. And when I grew up, I was very lucky, I grew up in the countryside, and I used to go out walking with my dog, and they'd be like these great big rabbit warrens, big mounds of earth with loads of burrows in. And I always used to wonder what was going on inside, if there were little towns or villages in there, or if they were having little rabbit parties. So I thought this could be a world where the rabbits live, and that the warrens could be their tribes. And so I sat down and I drew my own map of my own fantasy world, and I made up some characters, and I started writing a new story, which became The Legend of Podkin One-Ear. And then I sent that off to some publishers, and I was very lucky. They liked it, and it became published, and it even went on to win some prizes. So I was very pleased that I didn't give up writing when I was very depressed after my book got cancelled. And then my publishers asked me if I could do a series about Podkin. So I don't know if you're following the series at all, but there's now, in September, the 6th book came out, which was called Uki in the Ghost Burrow. And I'm just literally this week, I've started writing book 7. So it's gone from one book into a whole series of books. And that's another skill, writing a series of books. So when you're a writer, you're constantly learning new things. And you know, it's hard enough just to write one book, but to kind of extend that into a series. So I have loads and loads of notebooks here now, and I have to keep track of all the characters and what's happened in the past, and put it all together and build up a series. But then I still had my ideas for my first bunch of characters, and I wanted to go back to them. So I managed to get the rights back from my first publisher. I took it to my lovely new publisher, Faber, and asked them if they would be interested in these books, and they said they would be very interested, and they'd like to publish a series. So I went back to my characters that were in my first book, and I had a chance to rewrite my book. So I've added some new characters in, I've changed lots of scenes, and I've I've tidied up all the writing, because when I read it, it was really awful. Yeah, it's come out again just now as a new book. It's called Carnival of the Lost now, and it's going to be a series. So there's another one coming out in July and another one coming out next year. Yeah, and these are the characters, if you can see them on the front there. So we've got the main character is Sheba. She's this girl at the front here, and her kind of special ability is she's basically like a werewolf. She has a wolf trapped in her body, and every now and then the wolf kind of creeps out. But every day, her everyday face is kind of, she's covered in hair, which is why she's in the sideshow. And then her friend here, this is Sister Moon, and she has, her eyes are just pure black, and so she can see at night, and she can also move incredibly fast. And she's very good. She's got these big knives she uses, and she can throw them really well. And there's Pyewacket here down the bottom, and he just looks very grotesque. He's got very long arms, and his kind of sideshow act is that he's an imp, a witch's imp, which he uses to kind of claim he's got magical powers, which he doesn't have really. He's very good at climbing, and he's also quite disgusting. And then at the back here, we've got Gigantus, who's a big strong man who's very good at lifting things and being quite gruff, but he's also got a soft side, and he's writing a romantic novel. And this is Mama Rat here. She has a set of rats. You can just about see the rats on her hat, and in this box here, which she can talk to, she can communicate with, so she sends them out on little errands and speaks to them. And this guy here is Plump Scuttle. He's the owner of the sideshow, and so a bit like lots of sideshow owners at the time, they weren't very nice people. They were quite cruel to their acts. So he's a very horrible, nasty man.
How many of the characters were in your original version? And how many of those, I suppose?
Pretty much all. Pyewacket I had to change. He was originally a boy with a monkey's tail, but he was a bit too rude apparently, so I had to change him. And Sister Moon I changed a bit as well. I just made her a bit cooler, a bit more Victorian with her dark glasses and a top hat. But I changed lots of the baddies, and I changed lots of the scenes as well. So that was really fun to go back and have a go at reworking that and rewriting it. And it's also been illustrated this time. Got some beautiful illustrations by Sam Usher in there. Some lovely black and white ink illustrations in there.
The point in which you see Sam's work, I mean, obviously you have a little briefing chat with him, which I assume happened on Zoom this time around. The point where he delivers you a load of drawings, is that must be such an exciting moment.
Yeah, that is kind of, and with the Podkin books as well, that's my favorite moment, is when you spent 6 months, 7 months writing this book and editing it, and then finally you get these visuals through, and you can kind of see your world there. It's amazing. Yeah. And I'm lucky for two brilliant illustrators. So Sam Usher and David Wyatt are both amazing, and their work's just incredible. So my favorite part is definitely when I get to see the pictures that they've drawn.
Yeah. Patrick from 4W, and I can't think which class that is at Wendover, I don't know, asks how many books have you written? So I think, judging by that, you've done 7 of those, and then this one, is that right? Or was that 6 of those?
There's six of the Podkin ones, the 5 Realms ones, and that one there. So that's 7 altogether. That have been published. But obviously, with publishing, it's always kind of a year or 2 years behind. So there's lots more books that I've written that haven't come out yet. So that's when I get a bit confused about which ones are actually out and which ones are being edited. But yeah, so 7 that are out at the moment. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Right, and I was going to have a quick go at drawing a map with you. So often when I do these workshops and things, I do a map drawing workshop where I draw a map, and people in schools can draw along. So but we didn't have a great deal of time today, so I thought I'd just do a really super quick one. But if you want a kind of a more in detailed version, if you go to my website, which is kmlarwood.com, there's a video on there where I go through it in more detail, and you can pause it and draw along. And there's also loads of other free resources on there that I put on, lots of colouring sheets and get dice games and things like that if you're interested in word searches. So drawing a map, if you've got a sheet of paper there. So this is a really good thing. I often do this when I go into schools as well. It's a really good way to start a piece of writing, because my favourite author, J.R. Tolkien, the first thing he said was when he was thinking of the idea for The Hobbit, the first thing he did was he drew a map. And I did it as well when I was coming up with my fantasy book. And it's really interesting, actually, because you think you have an idea of what the world is like, but then you start drawing it and you start coming up with all sorts of new things. And quite often the story starts appearing as you're drawing the map. And it's a really good way to start you off ready for a piece of writing. And the other good thing about it is you don't have to be an amazing artist. So a lot of people think, oh, I can't draw, but it doesn't really matter. These can be as simple as you like. I'm just going to do a super quick, really simple one. So the first thing you need to do is you just need to do the outline of the coast. And I'm sure you've seen lots of maps. It's just like a kind of wiggly line. Just let your pen kind of go for a walk. Trying to keep it on the screen. I'll just do a small one. Keep it on the screen. A couple of rivers in there. And then what I usually do is just to show where the sea is, I just put some very simple waves in. Then the next thing is to put some features on this land you've done here. So a good thing to do is mountains, and mountains, they always go in a line, which is like called a mountain range. So you can make them as detailed as you like. I'm just doing some simple upside down V's. There's some mountains there. We've got a couple of rivers, maybe some marshes. There's a little symbol you can use for marshes.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe a forest. And usually I spend hours drawing all the trees, but I'm just going to do a blob for a forest there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So put some features on, and then when you're making up a fantasy world, the really tricky thing is you have to name everything, and everything needs to have its own name. So what I usually do is I think about who's living in this world. So I mean, we could have, for example, cats living here. So you want to think of a name for your country that has something to do with cats. And a good tip to use is think about the Latin name. So a Latin name for cat is feline. So I'm going to use that and call this Felinica. That's the name of my country. Okay. And then you need to name all the features you put on. So this is where adjectives come in really useful. So if you think of a couple of adjectives for each of your features. So for the mountains, for example, we could have maybe, I don't know, steep and rocky. And then you put those together and you call those the steep rock mountains.
You're giving all your tricks away.
Yeah, I know. And then same thing for forest. I think of a forest. It could be a nice forest. It could be a nasty forest. Let's have a nasty. We call it like a damp, gloomy forest. So we're going to call that gloom damp forest. There we go. And then some places for our characters to live. I usually just do dots where they have kind of towns and cities. And the way I name those is I think of. So, for example, if it's cats, I think of something to do with cats. And then I use lots of endings. If you think of all the towns and cities around you where you live, a lot of them have the same ending. A lot of them end in things like tun or ville or port or bridge. So we've got cats. I'm going to have cats purr. So I'm going to have purr bridge here. What else do cats do? Cats like fish. So I'm going to call this one down here Fish Hampton. There you go. And then so name all the places where you've got your characters living, name all the features, the seas and everything needs name basically. And you can also add things like compasses on there and little sea monsters and things. And then of course, the classic thing, I'm sure you used to do at primary school, if you want to age it, you can crumple it up, paint it with tea and then get an adult to put it in the oven for you to dry out. So it looks like a nice antique map. And then use it for a piece of writing. There you go. That was just a super quick one. If you want the full version, you can go on the website.
Mine's I haven't finished mine. I've called it Dogland. I thought I'd be a completely opposite to you.
Oh, cool. I've seen all sorts. I've seen snakes and dragons and everything else.
Yeah, really good.
And then I thought the last thing to do before we get to the questions is I might read a bit to you. Would that be okay?
Yeah, it'd be lovely. Yes, please.
I'll read a bit. Shall I read a bit of Carnival or shall I read a bit of Podkin? Probably Carnival would be best. That's the one. I'm going to read a bit from near the start of the book. This is chapter 2. So this is where Sheba, she started off in a kind of living in a seaside town in a sideshow there. And she was bought by Gideon Plumpscuttle, the man who owns the sideshow in London. She was taken off and she was put into a caravan that he was staying in with his axe. And this is from the moment where she first meets the other people in the sideshow. Once the shrieks had finished, the rhythmic clop of the horses' hooves and the gentle sway of the caravan began to soothe Sheba's nerves. Enough even for her to brave a quick look around. Plumpscuttle had shoved her into what she now realised was a cosy wooden room on wheels, with a window, shelves, pictures on the walls, and even a miniature stove. If it wasn't for the other inhabitants, it would feel like a snug little house. There were 2 low bunks on either side, and she edged forward to sit on one, sneaking glances at her new comrades. The bulk of a giant, the biggest man she had ever seen, took up almost half the caravan space. He had a shaved head, a craggy face scratched with crisscross patterns of old scars, and a broad striped woolen jersey that looked as though it would pop its seams at any second. Squished into a curled ball, he was trying to jot notes in a leather-bound journal, his meaty fingers making the pencil look like a toothpick. Sitting on the bunk beside Sheba was a slightly older girl dressed in a boy's charcoal grey suit and trousers. She wore a top hat from which a cascade of ebony black hair flowed all the way down to her waist. Spectacles with smoked glass lenses covered her eyes, making Sheba wonder what she had to hide. The bunk opposite was occupied by a mysterious figure puffing on a long clay pipe, its face hidden behind the wide brim of a felt hat. It was only when the person looked up, showing vivid green eyes and soft greying curls, that Sheba realised it was a woman. She was wearing a patched greatcoat, breeches, and knee-high leather boots, and her left arm was resting on a large wooden box from which Sheba could hear a quiet rustling. It smelled as though some kind of animals were inside, and when the woman caught Sheba staring at it, she gave her a quick wink. Stranger still, hanging from the roof, was a small iron cage, and in it was a young boy. His arms dangled through the open door, stretching far longer than any child's arms were supposed to. They poked from his shirt sleeves, covered with bristly grey hair that spread down to his broad, spidery hands, even spilling onto the knobbled joints of his fingers that were topped off with curved claws. The skin of his face was leathery and crinkled, like an old boot left too long in the sun. Wide yellow eyes glared out from under a mop of shaggy hair, and crooked fangs jutted up from his bottom lip. It was a bizarre set of travelling companions, but one in which Sheba the wolf girl fitted quite well. She began to feel ashamed about her first reaction. "I'm sorry I screamed when I saw you," she said in a quiet voice. "That's quite all right," said the woman with the clay pipe, smiling. "We're used to it," added the giant, looking up from his journal. "Bit of a cheek, though, when you look like an accident in a wig factory," said the boy. "Ignore him," said the woman. "He's awful rude to everyone he meets, so you mustn't take it personally." "It's fine, I don't mind," said Sheba, although actually she did. "I am a bit strange, I suppose." "As are we all, dearie." The woman turned to face the room. "And now you've pulled yourself together, I suppose it's time you were introduced to the company." She leant forward and with the end of her pipe began pointing out the others in the caravan. "That great mound of might and muscle is known as Gigantus, the man mountain. Strong as a bull, but soft as a duckling on the inside. The young lady beside you is the famous Sister Moon, daughter of the dark, but faster than the light. The long-armed creature in the cage is Pyewacket, one of the witches' imps discovered by Matthew Hopkins himself a full 200 years ago." As their names were mentioned, they each gave Sheba a glance or a nod. Sheba smiled back, then turned to the woman. "You didn't tell me your name," she said. "I didn't? How rude. I am Mama Rat, and these here are my little darlings, the cleverest ratties in the country." She tapped the box beside her, at which a series of squeaks and squeals emerged. "Hush now," Mama Rat whispered into one of the holes on the top. "You can get a good look at her when we stop, nosy things." She gave Sheba another wink and blew a few smoke rings from her pipe. There. That's all the characters introduced for you. Brilliant. And now I think we've got some time left for some questions.
We've got loads of questions. Let me.
Cool.
So Lucy from Long Marston asked a lovely question. If you could live in a book, which book would you live in? And I think she's not just your own, but I think she's referring to all. You mentioned Tolkien earlier. I mean, surely that would be one lovely place. But which would be your place to live?
The problem is with books, though, they sound great, but the characters often have are in quite a lot of danger, aren't they, and being chased by monsters and things like that. Yeah, I think it would have to be Tolkien. I love all the Lord of the Rings films, and yeah, I'd love to live in Hobbiton maybe, or Rivendell. That'd be awesome.
I'm with you on that. I just think that's amazing. Joshua from Wendover, 4S Wendover. It's a tough one, asking what your favourite child is, but which is the most exciting book you've written?
Oh, goodness me. Yeah. Well, hopefully they're all exciting. So I don't know. They all have like kind of. I like writing the battle scenes and things like that. So obviously the Five Realms books, there's lots of big battles in there, which I love writing. I find those bits really exciting. But I managed to put lots of action in Carnival of the Lost as well. So hopefully they're all exciting in certain places. Fingers crossed.
I spoke with Kieran yesterday, and we sort of jokingly said, classic questions you get from children is, what's your favourite colour, or what's your favourite animal and stuff. I have to say, some of the questions coming in are brilliant. You know, honestly, kids, you're doing brilliantly. So Archie from Longmarston, how long does it take to write one of your books? I mean, obviously, if you're now writing two distinctly different series, it's going to take a lot of your time.
Yeah, it does. Actually, there's more series that are coming out that haven't even been announced yet, so I'm trying to write about 4 series at once at the moment. But yeah, it takes quite a long time. So first of all, I mean, the main thing is thinking of the ideas. So when you're writing a series, obviously I've been writing the Podkin books, the Five Realms books, for quite a long, for about 6 years now, and I'm always thinking about ideas for the next books. And I can actually, because I'm sitting at my desk, I can show you my top secret notebook. So what I do is, at the back I have a section for each of the books, and I just spend, while I'm writing the other books, I spend years kind of jotting down. So these are the notes of book 6, and these are just all the ideas that I've had over the years. I've had to even stick an extra bit of paper in there. I'll just jot them all down, and then when it comes to actually writing the book, I sit down and I kind of hammer all those ideas out into a plan. And then I sit down and I write that. And the first draft usually takes about, I'd say, 3 months to write. They're normally about 60,000 words or so. And then that goes off to my editor, who's a bit like your teachers, and she sends it back to me with all the corrections and things I need to change. And then maybe I'll go for a couple of rounds of those edits. And then it goes to a copy editor, who kind of looks at the fine detail. And then finally a proofreader, who checks for things like the commas are in the right place and I haven't put semicolons in the wrong place and stuff like that. And the whole bit of writing takes probably about, I'd say, 7 or 8 months altogether. And then it goes off to the illustrators for them to do their bit.
What Lottie from 4W, I'm not sure which school that is. If whoever's putting those, it can mention the school name. Have you read? Do you like, a big fan of Harry Potter? Are you a fan of?
Oh yes, love Harry Potter books. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's an incredible world. If ever there was an idea for a book you wish you'd written, I suspect there's a million of us who would say, "Darn it, Wizard School, that's amazing."
Yeah, it would be nice. Yeah, nice to have all those book sales as well. Yeah.
Nice question here. No credit at all. But what makes you think of these characters? I mean, the ones from the circus, the sort of circus there, they're so different, all of them. So what gave you the inspiration for them all?
Some of them just kind of popped into my head, really, when I was thinking of who would be in a Victorian sideshow. Often I think I've got a list of all different ones that I tried out to start off, different kind of powers, like children with like stretchy arms and ones that could breathe underwater and things like that. Sorry, my dog's going crazy outside.
He wants to be on my map, Dogland.
I just went through, and kind of picked ones that I thought were right for the story. And even after I'd written the story, I tweaked them and changed them a bit as well. So,
yes. Which do you like best? Oh, this is a good question from Seema in Wendover. Which do you like best, being an author or being a teacher? Be very careful. Be very careful. There's a lot of teachers watching here.
I'll have to say being an author, because as every teacher will know, teaching is a very, very hard job. Yeah, very, very hard. Lots and lots of work. And your teachers, they go home after they finish teaching you, and they're working late into the night, doing planning and all sorts of things. So yeah, being an author, I just get to daydream all day, basically, which is is my favorite thing to do anyway.
Yeah. I was our adult book of the month last month was Beth Moray, and Beth Moray joined us for the book club meeting, and she has a special credit for teachers in her book because she gets very emotional whenever she thinks of teachers dressing up for World Book Day. So this day is the hardest day of her year. She gets very, so all of you teachers who are dressed up today, you are making Beth Moray, the author, cry, which is very sweet. Frankly, I wonder whether we should have dressed up. Actually, I feel like I've let the team down.
I'm dressed up as an author.
Annabella from Long Marston, if you could do any other job apart from writing, what would it be? And teaching.
I'd quite like to be an illustrator. So yeah, going back to my kind of childhood dreams of art, I'd quite like to illustrate some books, but I haven't done enough practice. So I need to get some serious practice in to improve my illustrating. But that would be, yeah.
Mrs. Bennett from Wendover. Sounds like a character from Jane Eyre. How many times do you have to rewrite, edit your book before the book is published? That's a very adult question, I think, isn't
it? Yeah, quite a few. Obviously, as I've kind of been writing for longer and having more practice, I kind of don't have to do quite so much. And I spend a lot of time planning the book before I write it, which cuts down a bit on the editing time. But for Carnival, so I mean, goodness knows how many times I've rewritten this. Probably, I'd say about 20, because it went through all the rewrites before it got published, and then all the rewrites when it first got published, and then the second time around another one. So yeah, so many times. I mean, I practically can recite every page in my sleep with this one. But usually I'd say probably about 2 or 3 rewrites before we get into kind of like the fine tuning.
Yeah. The worst I was saying how many people I've interviewed, authors I've interviewed in the last 2 years. The worst case I ever had, an author called Fran Quinn. An adult book is about 80,000 words, maybe 90,000 words, and she had to rewrite 40,000 words of it. That's a tough pill to have to swallow. It was a debut novel, so it was obviously exciting for her. Alice from Wendover, very lovely question. If you could have one of the powers of the people in your book, which would it be?
Oh, crikey. I think it'd be quite cool to be able to turn into a wolf. That would be really cool. Yeah, I'd like that one. So if anyone upset you or annoyed you or was moving really slowly in the queue in front of you in the supermarket, you could just, turn into a wolf and snarl at them. That'd be really good.
Lovely. There's not a child's name, but it's from 5EC Grove. How many have you already? I mean, obviously, this is the first one in the series. Have you already panned out how many books you're going to write? That's the gist of the question.
So the Carnival ones, I've already written them. There's 3. It'll be 3, and they're all already done. So
oh wow,
yeah. So well, this one obviously was written already, and I just rewrote it. But in the meantime, I managed to write the second one. And then last year, when everyone was in lockdown, I managed to write the third one. Yeah, so they're already written. Hopefully, there's going to be some more as well. And the second one, they're each 10 years apart. So the next one is 10 years later on and has some new characters. And the third one is 10 years after that. And the third one was really exciting, actually, because I got to I set it in Paris during the siege of Paris, which was when the what became Germany, but the Prussian army surrounded Paris, had a siege, and the people living inside, they were so hungry they had to eat all the cats and the dogs, and then they ate all the rats, and then they had to eat all the animals in the zoo just to survive. So that was really good at researching that and writing about it.
Yes, the basis to Les Miserables. The Zach from 6T term furlong, what was your inspiration for writing Carnival Lost? Did you go to a carnival or something?
No, it was just so I was trying to think of an idea. I'd been playing around writing like a set of characters, and I'd written like a kind of sci-fi thing, or I was starting to plan out a sci-fi thing where there were the crew of an alien ship, and they're all different aliens, and they're all kind of squabbling with each other. I didn't really work, but I loved writing these different characters that all looked completely different to each other and had different abilities. I was trying to think, what kind of setting could I put these characters in? And then it just kind of popped into my head, the Victorian sideshow. and I knew I'd obviously studied the Victorians at university and school, and I knew quite a lot about them. And I knew the story of the guy called the Elephant Man, who had a condition where his bones kind of grew out of control, and he looked very unusual, and he got put in a sideshow and was treated quite badly. So that was my kind of basis, my inspiration for the story.
Yes, that's an amazing film. Everyone watching is too young to watch it, but at some point, The Elephant Man is an amazing film. Isabel from Term Furlong, can anyone write a book?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, it's just a skill. It's like learning to ride a bike, you know. And you just need to put in. I mean, no one can sit down and just suddenly write one. You need to put in lots of hours and years, even of practice, to get good enough to be published, I would say. But yeah, anyone can write a book. It's just a matter of sitting down, writing lots and lots, reading lots and lots, so you get kind of the experience of how to write description and plots and things like that. And just practice.
Yeah. Guy from Cheddington. Hello, Guy. This is a great question. Classic author question, but very good. And do you want your book to be made into a movie? Any of your books to be made into movies?
Yeah, that would be wonderful, wouldn't it? If it was done well.
Have you sold film rights for any of them?
I have, but nothing's kind of happened with it yet. So yeah, if it was done really well, it would be great. I mean, I was really excited because I love the films, The Labyrinth and Dark Crystal by the Henson Workshop. I don't know if you know those, but they have like puppets. They've recently been on Netflix, I think, with Dark Crystal. It's all done with puppets. And they were interested at one point. They were interested in Podkin, which I was very, very excited about that. But it kind of fell through, and so yeah, it would be great if it was done well, and they didn't change everything too much. It really annoys me when I see a film of a book and they've changed everything.
Lovely. There's a general question from Term Furlong. Do you? I know the answer is. Do you draw your own illustrations for your books? You've already mentioned Sam. Now, is it? Who do you work with for illustrating? Is it different people in all your different books?
Yeah. So with the Five Realms books, it's David Wyatt, who's a great fantasy illustrator. And yeah, Sam Usher in Carnival of the Lost. Yeah, unfortunately, no, I don't. But I do in the Five Realms books. I get to draw the maps at the start, and every now and then they let me do something else. Like I've done some pictures of the gifts at the back of one, and some of the chapter headings and things like that. So I get to do a little tiny bit. But
and who gets the decision to choose which illustrator to use?
Other publishers choose. So they kind of often, when you write a book, they have an idea what they want it to look like and which illustrator would be best suited to it. So they kind of, yeah, they kind of really pick the illustrator. They do kind of say, well, what do you think about this one or that one? But on the whole, it's their decision, really.
Yeah. I had a question earlier and I can't remember who asked it, but what was your favorite subject to teach when you were a teacher? And why did you want to be a teacher before being an author?
I just kind of ended up doing it, really. Yeah, because I did a degree in English, and it's a bit tricky to get a job in doing anything with English. But when I was younger, I had a summer job where I used to teach archery to children. So I knew I kind of liked teaching and I like working with young people. So yeah, it was just a natural progression really to go into primary education. And I taught reception, so I kind of taught everything, and it's a kind of different kind of teaching. You don't really, I don't know if you remember being in reception, but you don't stand up in front of the class and teach a lesson. You set everything up around the room, and then you go about. The children can choose what they want to do. So it was really fun, actually. So, but everything was a kind of big mess of paint and glitter and sand and water everywhere. So yeah, it was very exhausting, but very fun.
Isabel from Cheddington. How many books are you aiming to write? I suspect in your career, given how many you've got on the back burner ready to be published, it could be hundreds.
I don't know about hundreds, but yeah, as many as possible. I think as long as I keep having ideas, and publishers keep wanting my books and people keep wanting to buy them and read them, then I'm just going to keep going. Yeah, so as many as I can.
Jonah from Grove, he's clearly going to be an accountant when he's older. How many books did your best-selling book sell? Do you know that sort of stuff? I don't know.
Not really. I get kind of rough figures, but they're kind of like a year out. I think Podkin sold nearly 100,000. I think, yeah, around about that. I think.
Wonderful, wonderful. This is Maggie's asked a very thoughtful and caring question. Who helped you through this journey? The journey to become an author.
Obviously, my family have been very patient because I've had to spend, especially when I was teaching, I'd be working all day teaching, and then I'd come home and have to go and spend every evening writing as well. So I was doing 2 jobs at once at one point. And obviously, I have lots of people behind the scenes that help. So I've got an agent who looks after me. I've got my editors and my illustrators and everybody else, and lots of people that work behind the scenes, publicists and things like that. And everyone, when children's publishing, everyone's just so lovely. Everyone's been really helpful and really supportive. So yeah, there's a great big team of really cool people behind me.
Ben from Grove has asked if you could be a character from your book, one of your books, which one would it be?
Oh, I don't know. Uki's really cool with the Five Runs books, because he's over the course of his stories, he's got lots of power, so he's quite powerful and strong. So he'd be quite a good one to be. And there's a character in Podkin called Crom, who I think is really cool. He's the blind warrior who's just really very, very cool.
Listen, I've got 84 questions on one side, and the chat function's got another 67. I'm honestly, I'm not touching the questions. The children are being amazing, but we only have 2 or 3 minutes left. So I'm just going to say the book's obviously available with us. It's on a special discount price at the moment through Book Today. So I know lots of schools have been sent the links out to your parents. And you get one of these lovely little postcards, signed postcards, with both Sam and Kieran's signatures on there. As part of getting the book as well. So do tell your parents when you get home today to get the book from the link that schools have sent out. Kieran, what's next then? I mean, obviously, do you know what books are going to come out?
Yes, so I've got the paperback of Ghostborough coming out in April. And then I've got the second one of these is called Carnival of the Hunted, coming out in July. And then I've got a brand new fantasy book coming out in October, a completely whole new fantasy world.
Oh, okay. That time's around our festival, actually. So I did say to you yesterday, let's get you to Tring when you're actually starting to do in person and coming out on tour.
Oh yeah, that'd be lovely. Yeah, definitely.
Lovely. I don't know. It's the publishing are very slow to start getting out and about again, but I'm sure we can host you at a number of schools and also at the venue next to our bookshop. Schools, thank you so much. Those who are joining Polly Faber in about 15 minutes, I'll see you in 15. But Kieran, once again, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Have a great book day, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.